Hey developers, today we have a special topic I'm going to discuss with you guys, and that is how you can make money as a developer. So we're going to look at ways you can make money offline and also online, and I'm going to go about through a lot of different tips that you guys should know. So stay all the way to the end. I'm actually going to be giving away a couple of courses, but you'll have to pay attention to win them. Hey, and if you're new to my channel, my name is Eric. I'm a software developer with over 10 years of software development experience. I'm also an author. So that's a little bit about me. Let's go ahead and jump in. I brought Dylan in from Coding Tutorials 360 to help me out. So let's begin. Hey everybody. So I got Dylan here. So Dylan with Coding Tutorials 360. Although you named your channel now as just Dylan Israel.
Yeah, that's right, man. We gotta get that personal branding going.
Cool. So today we're talking about how programmers can make money, and I think we're both been doing development for a long time, and we both have different ways we've made money. So I've kind of structured this as we're going to break it up between online and offline. So if you're a new developer watching, this will probably be very interesting to you to just kind of think of different ways you can make a living off of being a developer or a programmer. Same thing, but let's start. So in offline, I think that what everybody thinks about when you think about starting a new job is starting a job, basically getting a job as a developer. And so there's two different ways you can work for, like a small company or like a big company. So small companies, I've worked for small companies before. And let me ask you this, Dylan. I know you have a course that you've created that helps people with interviews, which kind of ties nicely into this topic. Let's talk about that for a minute. Can you explain what your new course is?
Yeah, so I would have been studying for my own interviews and technical interviews, and sort of the hardest part for me is not the phone interviews where you're talking about questions about JavaScript or your topics of choice. It's about being prepared to answer those algorithms in those technical interviews. And so my course is called the 100 Algorithm Challenge, and it's 100 algorithms going through solutions. Some of the problems are from like Google and Facebook and Uber and things like that. A lot of them are just more common ones that you're going to get there. They vary in difficulty, but really it's just a great resource to practice and sort of get into that job ready mode.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of typical. It doesn't matter if you're interviewing for a small company or a big company. Usually you're going to get some sort of algorithm or some kind of tricky question like that, at least just to see if you can program. I mean, like, for example, small companies might ask you more take-home tests, but they might actually ask you algorithm tests. I mean, is that what you see? Do you see more of in the big companies asking more of these algorithm questions, or is it all over?
I would definitely say that if you're working at if your goal is to work at a larger company, a larger corporate company, you're more than likely going to get an algorithm type of problem. But that doesn't mean that you're also not going to get a take-home test. I've gotten all of the same, and during had an algorithm problem, and then you're also, hey, go ahead and code out a feature real quick, and as if you had HTML, CSS, JavaScript all right here, write some pseudocode for it, and how you're going to connect it. But definitely for the big companies, you're going to be doing algorithms. And for the little companies, I think it just kind of depends.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely depends on who they're working with. And by the way, so if anybody's interested in that course, I have a link in the description below. Definitely check it out. I think it's 11, 12 bucks.
$10 with coupon code Coding God. 10 cents an algorithm. That's it. That's all we're
Cool.
charging.
All right, man. Yeah, just check out the link below. And that'd be awesome. So pick that up. So going back to the topic, so we have small companies that might be asking you algorithm questions. They may not. So I kind of identified 3 different ones in here, and jump in, Dylan, if I missed any. First is like you work for the web development shop. So this is like every city has, like, feels like a dozen web development businesses that kind of cater towards the local places in town, and they're always looking for new hires. And I think this might even be a good opportunity for new developers too that don't have a ton of experience.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the ways. And I know when I was trying to get started, I interviewed at a lot of these places. So the pros for web dev shops is, hey, you can get that experience, and that's what's most important, and you're going to continue learning and growing. The cons is they're going to pay you like dirt a lot of times, and the stress is much higher.
Yeah, do you think, and it depends on the web development shop, some will be like Angular only, some will be like React, some will be Vue. it feels like depending on the shop, they might be like language specific too. So if you want to get really good, because all your projects are going to be on WordPress, you may want to join a web development place that has WordPress. So it might be better just for the experience. Like you said, probably not a ton of money, but you're getting a ton of experience.
Yeah, and it also depends on the size of the shop. So I know my internship was at like a 4-person shop where it's basically just one guy and like the people who work for him. So in that instance, it's like you're just basically there to help out. And but you know, you're working at 20, 30, 40-person company where you're doing websites and web applications. You know, it depends on the organization, but it's a different environment in either situation, but not one I've ever actually been a part of other than that internship, and I didn't really enjoy it, to be honest.
Yeah, why? Just because it was not just because you were an intern and you wanted to get in there and code.
Yeah, I think that was part of it. Part of it was I don't really get enjoyment out of making websites. I have this sort of there's this distinction between in my mind between a website and a web application, and sort of the fun parts of it to me is the logic and building out multiple components. But when you're just sort of doing static HTML, which some of these small mom and pop web design shops are, it gets very boring very quick.
Yeah, you're just taking designs and then moving them over.
Yeah.
Not quite as crazy. Another thing, and you can also get web development shops a lot bigger that are more have more roles. Like sometimes you're in a small web dev shop and you're doing everything from HTML, CSS, the JavaScript, and maybe even some of the back end. So that might be good if you want to learn like a lot, kind of working for a small company or someone that has 3 or 4 people, because you probably going to wear a lot of hats too, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Moving on. So digital agency, I kind of think of this as a little bit different than the web development shop. An agency, I think, does more than just web development. They maybe have a marketing team. Maybe they do social media. Maybe they have a PR team involved. Typically, this is a little bit of larger business than your local web dev shop. So you can work at one of these companies and be able to also kind of like the web development shop, you're probably gonna be a little bit more specialized, but that might be another way to go. They probably pay a little bit better than some of these smaller mom and pop shops.
Yeah, and the digital agencies typically will be willing to hire contractors, depending on the agency. But there's a lot of agencies that will, you know, their whole purpose is just, hey, we have devs, and we hire them to corporate companies to handle that. And so that's a different environment as well. It's kind of one I recommend people don't go into when they're just getting their career started, because I think it's important for you to be part of a team and learn and grow, instead of going straight mercenary into the game.
Yeah, we'll touch on that more in a little bit. Another, just a small company type, like an in-house programmer. So there's a lot of local businesses that you might have I don't know, like your gas station, like a locally owned gas station or an accounting firm in town, but they want to they want to have a web presence. So a lot of times they do contracting, but sometimes they'll actually hire an in-house programmer. And then at that point, you're doing IT, you're doing, you're doing your web development. You probably have a lot of roles too. And that, I think, for a beginner, once again, probably doesn't pay a ton, but it could be a good way to learn a lot of different skills. I think some small businesses get confused of IT and like a programmer developer. Sometimes it kind of crosses the line a little bit.
Yeah, and I've seen that a lot on these sort of organizations that they're like, well, we have like 3 IT people and we just need them to do everything. We need them to maintain the website. We need them to maintain the servers. We need them to maintain the printer. Like it's kind of like I think a good example of this would be Ricky Garcia on his channel. That was sort of the role he had before his latest job, and he's now going and he was sort of the IT guy, and he was part of the great parts of that is he got exposed to a lot of different things and found out what he liked and didn't like. But he was also, when you're in that spot, you can become a very, very valuable asset to a small organization.
Yeah, I think I think there's a lot of people in IT that kind of want to transition over to doing more development work. And it's a great career path if you can't get in the front door through just applying at a business and becoming an engineer or developer. Then maybe, yeah, you can look at QA is also another way, or the IT route. But I think both you have to preface by a lot of companies don't like it if you get hired on to doing IT and then you want to transfer in that same company to something else. Transfers are hard. At least my experience was I was in QA and it took me like almost 6 months, maybe 6 months to a year to transfer out of that QA role to a development job at the same company. Like I had to jump through a bunch of hoops. That's probably a different podcast for a different time, but moving on. So kind of in the larger company sense, there is really, there's a lot of big companies hiring developers, and usually this is where the big money is. There's the big five, I like to call them. Usually you've heard of these companies: Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, I guess it's called Alphabet now, and Microsoft. And so these companies are kind of the ones that'll probably pay the most. And when you tell someone you work there, people will be like, oh yeah, I know Google, I know Alphabet, or I know Facebook.
Yeah, there's I mean, in terms of software and tech, you're gonna be working with the most brilliant people because they can pay the best, right? That's not to say money's everything, but it's definitely a good indicator of who they can attract, right? So, but also these are companies that are software related in nature. A lot of times you may be working for big companies, but they're not, software isn't a key component of their business. It's just one part of their business. But in these environments, you're going to campuses, like literally campuses where, you have 5,000-10,000 people that work in the office, and 4,000 of them are developers at times. So it's definitely the big part of the big five is very accurate.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's kind of the difference. There's kind of an in between the small company, big companies, where they're not quite as big as the big five, but you probably heard of them, like maybe Verizon or Netflix too. Is you could probably put that there too. Or there's just like a really successful. There's tons of startups too, which might be actually have funding, so they're maybe considered small companies, but they have funding, so they'll actually pay. Usually, startups probably pay. Probably not top dollar. You're not going to get the best rates that you can get at these larger companies or big five, but you're also going to have a little bit more stability, and you kind of get some of that small company responsibility. You'll probably have a lot of hats too. But I mean, would you ever work at a startup, Dylan?
I would say I kind of have, actually. So my
Oh.
previous role, they weren't really a startup, but they were doing about $50 million in business a year, which isn't a ton in terms of business. And they had never done software before, so I was on of like a 4-person team. And so I got kind of the feel for that, where, okay, well, we have, there's only 4 of us, we have to do everything. But I would, my only thing with startups is I personally would be very interested in working in them, particularly because sometimes you can get equity, which is kind of cool. It's kind of a gamble, but I like gambling. But they've also had very interesting environments sometimes. Startups really understand that they need to attract talent that may otherwise be attracted by the big five, and so they have a lot of different programs to do that, which would be fun.
So another way of making money for developers is freelancing and contracting. I think this is really, it's like catnip for new developers because they think, whoa, I can do freelancing and make all this money. It's a lot harder than it seems, I think. So there's different types of freelancing and contracting. So there's like local, regional places. So if you could do some networking in your hometown and contact, like go to your local meetups for local businesses and tell everyone you're a developer and you're looking for work, you might be able to get some business that way. There's also just telling everybody that you're a developer, and maybe you can get some referrals from friends and family.
Yeah,
You've done some of that.
Yeah, I get referrals all the time asking for portfolio recommendations if you want to do the work. So not the path I would recommend.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard, especially if you do friends and family. They'll probably want discounts.
Yep.
And they're probably not going to willing to pay you a lot. But it might be a way just to improve your portfolio, I suppose.
So when it comes to freelancing and contracting, sort of the agency aspect is the one I would recommend the most for, where they're like, hey, we have a, a 6 month or a year contract. Is that something you're open to? A lot of times, depending on the contract, they're more open to remote as well, which is really what people like about the sort of freelancing. They like that flexibility of, hey, I could go anywhere in the world, which makes sense. Maybe when you're a little bit younger, you don't have any responsibilities, but if you have kids and you're not going to go and get up and leave all of a sudden. But in terms of the local regional business, I've done a little bit of freelancing. It's very hard, and it's very hard to make money at it in long term, compared to when you compare it with being something like a in-house programmer, or maybe even a contractor through an agency.
Yeah, it's sort of like you have feast and famine too. You might get a contract, you might get this deal, and then all of a sudden 3 months later you're kind of done. You don't, and then now you have to find another client. You have to have, and part of being a freelancer too is you have to kind of keep feeding that pipeline of work, and that takes a different types of skills. You might have to hustle and meet your local businesses. And I kind of want to just mention one quick comment on the remote, and I think 100% agree. It's really difficult to do this route, but remote seems like the most enticing for a lot of developers. But you're going to have to really prove your worth. A lot of companies won't work with you if you for doing remote work unless you're kind of a mid-level or senior level dev.
Definitely. And that, I honestly, you shouldn't want to be remote right at the start of your career, because you're going to be missing out quite a bit. Where, hey, you need to be in there, gathering as much knowledge from the tech leads and senior devs and sort of what it's like to work on a team in person, and get that feeling before you sort of take on the journey of being a remote developer and all that entails.
Okay, one other way, so we can move on. Teaching. This is, those who can't teach. I don't know if that's kind of not a nice saying, but you could definitely.
It's definitely true.
As us, both of us are teachers, and we do and teach, I guess. But I guess the teaching, you could teach students. You can teach college level. You can even do private tutoring for people in your town. There's boot camps. If your city has a boot camp, you could try applying for a job and do teaching that way. I think teaching is a great way of learning too. I've definitely, through my whole career, I haven't known everything. And when I want to really understand a concept, being able to teach it to someone else is a great way to learn it.
Definitely. And I mean, that's sort of how my YouTube channel started and how I got better, is just by having to, okay, I did this, let me reiterate it and see if I actually understood it. Teaching, I said in an interview the other day, it's like, I would be a teacher, but it doesn't pay very well. And so it's kind of an unfortunate thing, is I actually really do enjoy teaching about, talking about software and teaching, and I think I would do an excellent job, but it just doesn't pay very well. So probably at some time in the future, I'll probably go work at a boot camp where they will pay decently compared to maybe, any college or any school. And in that case, I'm self-taught. They wouldn't hire me anyhow. So teaching is fun. It's a great way to learn. It's going to be a hard way to get a paycheck, though.
Yeah, probably not super recommended right at the beginning if you're trying to actually get a job. I mean, we're going to talk about some online ways where you can make money teaching. But I think if you're trying to work for your local educational system, it's probably low pay. And then there's probably some barriers too of having a college degree, for depending if you teach for K-12 or college. Mm-hmm. Boot camp's a good, interesting way. I think some boot camps actively look for some of their best students to come back and teach too. So if you go through a boot camp, you probably have a better luck of teaching at a boot camp too.
Yeah, and I know like Dev Mountain, for instance, they have teacher aides, which they pay them like $20 an hour or something for 6 months, and they help 2 cohorts to sort of get prepped, and they're their aides, and in that time they're applying to other jobs, and they're refining their skills. So there's a lot of great ways that you can teach and still get paid and still learn.
Another way to make money is this is another kind of a hard way of making money, but you could be doing live speaking. You could do conferences. Usually the way it works in the conference world for developers is there's these RFCs, request for, basically there's these requests that go out for people think of the RFPs, request for papers, where they look for people who want to talk at these conferences. You submit your conference talk. They have some sort of committee that looks over them and tries to rank them from like worst and best. And then depending on, some of them are more transparent than others. Some actually do it completely like blind. They won't even look at the speaker's name. Others kind of take in to consideration who the person is. So if you have like an online following, you might have a better chance of actually talking at the conference. And then depending on the conferences, some will pay only for your ticket in, and then some will actually pay for your flight and maybe a small like stipend every day for your food and drinks and stuff. So if you can find a conference that pays for you to go there and pays you at least your food, that might be worth it. If you can find the one that actually pays you to talk, then that's even better. Those are a little bit more rare. Usually you can get paid to, your ticket can be paid to get into the conference and maybe your flight, but for them to actually pay you to talk is kind of rare, especially in the tech world, but some of the bigger conferences do.
Yeah, and I my tech lead does that quite often, where he likes going to these conferences. But depending on the conference, you're spending $200, $300, or $1,000 to go to a tech conference, and so he'll often, the ones he wants to go to, offer to do like a talk on test-driven development or .NET, whatever it is, so he can get a free ticket and still go, and then he gives his 20-30 minute topic. So it's a pretty fun way to do it. I'd like to do it one day. I'm kind of intimidated, to be honest, and I don't know what I would talk about. But one day I will start going to meetups and giving my own talks, and after that, eventually conferences, I hope.
Yeah, I think that's a cool way to do it. And make money, it's probably gonna be difficult, but you can at least get in. And I know depending on the company, and this kind of goes back to being in a larger company, a lot of them will have budgets to send their developers to conferences. So you might get 1 or 2 conferences a year that they'll pay for, which makes this a lot easier. I know I've been at companies that didn't do that, and I've had to shell out, $300, $400 to get into the conference, and another $500 for a plane ticket, and another $500, $600, and you end up spending like thousands of dollars to go to a conference, especially if you have to travel halfway across the U.S. That's not fun. So the last way, kind of on the offline way of making money, is like entrepreneurship, and this is kind of a huge topic. You could create your own, instead of just being a contractor, you could create your own company, and then instead of you doing the work, you hire out to other developers. You might have to find some work overseas. There's a lot of websites where you can hire overseas workers for a lot cheaper. Then at that point, you're almost having to combine your development chops with your project management chops with your management. So you're going to have a lot of different skills to kind of put this all together. And this is definitely like in a video game where you have hard mode. This is like a hard mode way of making money.
Yeah, I actually have a coworker who's doing this very successfully right now, where he is selling WordPress sites to lawyers and doctors, and it's sort of in that space. And then he charges, after the several $1,000s or whatever it is for a website. I think he has like 100 sites now, but he charges $200 a month to maintain it. So hey, you need a content change, you want us to host, and that includes hosting and stuff like that. And he's making 5 figures a month off it right now. But it's definitely, I've been talking with him about it quite a bit. He's hiring like remote project managers to run it through, the tickets and Jira, because all that at every additional client, the communications and, the payroll, all that sort of stuff. It is quite a time consuming item.
Yeah, it can be quite lucrative if you do it right. But it is time consuming and pretty difficult, especially if you don't have any of those chops, or you have to have a ambition. So let's go into our online ways. I think you and me know a lot about this. We've both done a lot of these things. I think the first thing is to create a YouTube channel, kind of a personal brand of sorts. And then once you do that and you start building some momentum online, some of these things we're going to talk about, you kind of need an audience. Some of them you could probably do without. But the first way is the good old YouTube AdSense revenue, which is basically there's ads playing on different videos, and then you get a certain amount of payment on those. And then there's also multi-channel networks, which are, you can join like these networks of other YouTubers, and you give a split of your revenue to this multi-channel network, and then in return they give you advice on how to run your channel, and then they also do some ad optimization.
They just take your money, man. That's all. That's all MCNs do. MCNs are scams for the most part, in my opinion. In my yeah. So the AdSense revenue, it's not limited to videos either, right? So we kind of talking about having a YouTube channel because that's what we do. But you could have a blog where you throw an ad on there. A website where you throw an ad on there. That AdSense money can add up. I didn't realize it, but something like my website that I gets like 6,000-7,000 views a month, something like that on average. That's probably an extra $30-$40 if I were to throw an ad on the homepage real quick on there. So AdSense revenue can expand to quite a few things.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, it doesn't just relate to YouTube. That's a good point. So yeah, you could make money off of blogs and advertising too. Can make a little bit of money. Usually, this is a hard road if that's all you're doing, because you're not going to make enough money to live off of. This might be like good beer money, but that's about it.
Yeah, when you're going down this sort of AdSense route, it's really about creating that audience, the people who like the items we'll be talking about in a second that you can shill to. No, not shill, but you can share the things that you think people would like and that you can make some money off of. And you sort of build that audience of people who say, you know what, I respect this guy. He knows what he's talking about at least some of the time. And let me check this out. And that's where you get the value from. The AdSense money that comes with it is sort of like the gravy on top.
That's a good point. There's also sponsorships, product placement. So this kind of goes along with having your own blog or YouTube channel where people come up to you and say, hey, I'm selling web hosting. Could you, if you tell your audience about it, I'll give you a certain amount of money. And then you can do that either at the shout outs, the beginning of your videos. You can actually have a whole dedicated video you make for the sponsor. That video could be private. It might be something you just send to them and then they internally use it on their own YouTube channel or for their own internal use, or you might put it up in your own public YouTube channel. So you're kind of sharing a little bit of your audience with the advertiser, the sponsor, or you could do product placement. Like in the middle of your video, you can grab a can of Coke. And so there's a lot of ways you can make money on that. I think you've done quite a few of those. You know much more about this than I have.
Yeah. So I for about maybe 6 to 9 months ago, I decided that I was going to focus on a couple different things. And one of them was I wanted to have a 30-second ad or product placement, whatever you want to call it. They're really ads at the end of the day in my application. And they're in my video rather. And so I started, reaching out to people I've been sponsored by and say, hey, what do you think about a monthly sponsorship where I do 5 shout outs to you? And then I have sponsorships where at the end of the video, I have an outro sponsorship and I have a card sponsorship. And even when I don't have something in that 30 seconds, I start doing a self shout out to something that's going to help me in a different direction as well. So I think it's a crucial thing. I also think the important part of it is to keep it short. It's just supposed to be one part of your video. If you have a 15-minute video, don't have 7 minutes of ads, right? You want to have 30 seconds, maybe a minute at most. And then you want it to be relevant. Don't be like, oh, hey, here's my software channel. By the way, what do you think about this pair of socks? These are some great socks, so keep it relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I bet we could have a whole episode on sponsorship. There's so much to it. I know you do it really well. I know Brad, Travesty does it really well too. Almost every one of his videos are sponsored in some way. It just makes sense. And especially if this is also probably more of a hard road for new developers, because you kind of have to build up some sort of audience, and then it's much easier if advertisers come to you or sponsors come to you rather than you going to them. And it's kind of hard to say, hey, come sponsor my YouTube channel that gets 1,000 views a month, or my blog that gets 1,000 views a month.
Yeah, you definitely are going to need an audience for this route. One thing I would say is don't be afraid to go out there and reach out to the people when you have a little bit of momentum. I did, and I got like $100 month sponsorship, which doubled like my YouTube ad revenue at the time. And it was just like, hey, I'm going to tell you in the outro to go do that. And because of that, I've built a partnership, if you will, or I've built this relationship. and now I'm getting much larger sponsorships through that same company because we have this sort of work relationship. But you will get a lot of no's before you get a yes, much like dating.
Yeah, I'm still scared. Like I haven't, I haven't like consciously gone and try to seek out sponsors. I've always had them come to me, but that's something I need to work on. Another way that's really popular is Patreon, crowdfunding. I guess you could throw Indiegogo and Kickstarter in here too. Those are more product based. Patreon is, if you don't know what Patreon is, a way that you can take your favorite content creator and donate money every month to them, and in return you get special perks. So if you're a developer, you might give like a Q&A only to your audience once a month, or you might give special videos that are only for your Patreon sponsors, or you might give one-on-one feedback to them. So this could be a way you can make money. It seems like you have to be really deliberate on advertising it and keeping it up, because like anything else, you'll get kind of that initial rush and then kind of dies off a little bit.
Yeah, Patreon, at least in my instance, I've found very hard to maintain. It's something I have there. If people want to support me monthly, thank you very much. I one thing that I do is like, oh, if you donate $10 a month, which is a large amount, anytime I have a new course, I'll just give it to you for free. I'll shoot you a message, give it to you for free. But I've never been able to be very successful on Patreon, and the amount of energy I think to be successful might be better put into, other avenues as well. You may not get the same return on investment as you would like. And I think with now that you can, once you have 100,000 subscribers, which is a lot, neither of us combined have 100,000 subscribers, but now YouTube has added the subscription aspect of it in terms of that. Now, Patreon's not just for YouTubers, but in our case, now that people can subscribe to your channel for monthly amounts, that might be more successful than Patreon has been in the past.
Wow, yeah, I just heard about some of those new changes, and then they also, you can link to your merchandise, like your T-shirts and stuff. I saw you already did that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was looking into that. Maybe I will have a program with Erik T-shirt. We'll see. I have to design it and get thought out how I want to do that. That's cool. You can do that. Yeah. So that's interesting. I've never done Patreon. I feel like that might be something I do in the future for people that are really interested. Could work, but I've seen so many Patreon pages where it's like $30 a month, and I'm like, well, that helps, but it'd be nicer if it was a few hundred.
Yeah, that's around where I'm at. I'm like 30. I think the best month I've had is like $75 a month, and it's hard, but it's definitely a nice to have. Like, okay, cool. Here's an extra couple bucks to pay for my Adobe Cloud subscription. Thank you very much.
Exactly, and I pay $49 a month for my Adobe Cloud. And yeah, I'd like to get that paid for. Another thing, I think we've both done affiliates. So, and this is where you put a link to a product that you recommend. And by the way, when we're talking about sponsors and affiliates, these, and I'm speaking for Dylan, and I think he mentioned these are products that we agree with, we like, that people that watch these channels would enjoy. I think both me and Dylan are huge Udemy fans. So like Dylan has a bunch of Udemy courses. I'm an Udemy affiliate. These are things that we recommend, and obviously we would never recommend things that we don't recommend.
Yeah, and here's the thing. If you want to look at YouTube like a business, is any business, it's about repeat business, right? So let's say I trick you and I got you to buy something and I got my affiliate cut. You're not going to come back and buy the next item I recommend, or the reason people buy the recommendations is because there's a level of trust, and there's a level of, hey, this guy actually enjoys what he's selling and all the other items, and at some level you just kind of relate, and it's like, hey, if he likes it, I might like it. Not everything, but I can't speak for you, but I know I get a message almost every day from some company that's just like, hey, we have this points reward thing or something that's just completely unrelated and it's just crap, and they want to pay you money to shill it.
Yeah, that's just garbage. I get sometimes those emails, and I've ignored them, which I think is a good idea. So affiliates is just a way you can more of a way you can recommend a product. You usually put in your description, or you mention it during the video. If people click on it and buy the product, the important part is buy the product usually. Then you get like a cut of how much, whatever the product makes. So maybe you get like a couple dollars here and there, depending on how much the product is.
Yeah, and
So that could be a
most
way to make money.
Yeah, most if you're doing like an Amazon affiliate, it's never something very large. But there are affiliate like online courses affiliates are going to pay better. Like the Amazon affiliate, you might get like a 3 or 4% affiliate cut for like a book. It depends on the product. But sometimes I feel like people when they think about the sponsored shout outs and affiliates, they kind of feel dirty or bad about it. But if you understand that it's like relatable, right? So like an example, I filmed a video today that has an affiliate link where I'm reviewing Clean Code, which is a software book, right? And so in that, hey, I'm reviewing this book. If you're interested in it, please use my link so I can get 3% of your purchase, right? So it's oftentimes it's things people are already looking at getting, and then you're like, they're just helping you out in the process. Is kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good way to think about it. Another way, and I think this probably is the most profitable, and you really don't need to have like a huge audience to do this. So if you're a new developer, this might be a way to do it, and that's to create your own products. And there's a lot of different types of products you can create. So we're just going to go down the list real quickly. So one is if you're doing educational products like online courses. And Dylan, you've done a bunch of Udemy courses. I've actually just started my first online course where I'm teaching Vue.js and something called Nuxt.js, which you can find on the link below too. And then there's this really big market of how you teach other people how to make money too. It's kind of make money online.
That Ty Lopez life.